Welcome to everyone. If you pre-registered before February 6th, please help yourself to a bagged lunch, and if you didn't, I think probably enough time has elapsed that everybody who signed up for lunch has won, so please do help yourself. We almost always have leftovers, and so clearly just go ahead. Welcome everyone to this Virginia Theological Seminary Center for Anglican Communion Studies Lunchtime Forum. I'm Catherine Grebe, and I serve as director of the center. We want to warmly welcome both those in the room and those joining us virtually on Facebook. We're so glad you're here. For those who are new to the Center for Anglican Communion Studies, we exist to support the Anglican Communion by providing educational opportunities, by training leaders, and by providing opportunities for connection and gathering. By way of further introduction, we wanted to show a short, it's only 3 minutes, video for our 25th anniversary this year, detailing the vision that we bring to our work. Are you curious about the worldwide Anglican Communion and the many churches in it?
Learning about the Anglican Communion is like opening a present, or as Jesus said, like finding buried treasure in the field.
Tradition, vision, diversity, and courageous witness are some of our many treasures.
We have important common goals, like witnessing to God's love for the whole world and deepening the bonds of affection that unite us.
And common challenges, like complex histories of empire, colonization, political unrest, economic inequalities, and some differences of opinion.
The Center for Anglican Communion Studies at Virginia Theological Seminary in the United States exists to support our Anglican communion neighbors near and far by providing educational resources, by training leaders, young and old, lay and ordained, male and female.
We tend to focus on the global south and other parts of the community where our resources can have the greatest impact.
We're about connecting Anglicans throughout the world, working with Anglican commissions, networks, theological colleges, primates and provinces, bishops and dioceses, and with ecumenical partners and interfaith friends.
The work of the Centre truly lives out one aspect of the mission of Jesus Christ, serving your community and the wider church and supporting individuals to live out their calling.
One thing I've learned is a little bit more insight into the significance of deconstructing stereotypes.
It reflects the church that we are today. It has mixed nationalities, people come from different cultures and from different faiths.
One thing that I've learned in my relationship to the center is the ability to work cross-culturally. I'm able to work and relate with everyone.
The center is important because of the ecumenical way it enriches discussion. I imagine this to be a foretaste of heaven.
Reach out to us at the Center for Anglican Communion Studies.
We're here to provide support for all things Anglican Communion.
We need each other in all our commonalities and diversities to do God's work in the world.
Do some proofreading and get back to you on the subtitles. One easy way that you can stay engaged with the Center and broader Anglican Communion is to join the companions of the Center for Anglican Communion Studies. Pick up a brochure at the front table, right? They're there? Okay, good, awesome. Or look for information on our Facebook page or our web page. It's a way to join in deep conversations like these about Anglicanism and to be offered exciting opportunities in return. There's no cost, and by joining, you'll be invited to our annual Companions Dinner. This year, the new Secretary General of the Anglican Communion, Archbishop Anthony Pogo, is coming to VTS and will be our Companions Dinner special guest. You don't want to miss the chance. for a more intimate conversation with him. Seating for this event will be limited, so sign up soon and watch for more details on the dinner later to come. Please take a moment to look at the programming for the spring on our event card, also available on the tables. If you're here in person or on our Eventbrite page, if you're joining us virtually, to see the interesting events we have coming up. Since we know that not everyone can make these sessions, we are recording the public part of our discussion today so that others can access it later. Our time today goes until 1 p.m. And now to our presenter. Dr. Mercy Chukwayo received her PhD in New Testament from Nandi Azikiwe University and is head of New Testament Studies at Trinity Theological College, Umuahia. She also serves on a variety of diocesan committees on ministerial formation and theological education in her diocese of Agu Aniri in the Anglican Church of Nigeria. During her time at VTS on a CACS communion sabbatical, she is conducting preliminary research on advocacy for the ordination of women in the Anglican Church of Nigeria. Her presentation today concerns another area of her research interests, the relationship between Christianity and African traditional religion. We're very excited to welcome and learn from Dr. Chukwayo. And so we will begin the taping.
Hello, everyone. I want to start by appreciating the Dean and President of Virginia Theological Seminary, the Very Reverend Ian S. Markham, PhD, the Director of Center for Anglican Communion Studies, in the person of Dr. Grieve, Reverend Catherine Grieve, PhD. I want to appreciate the CACS team, Courtney, Hatley, and others. You've been wonderful. I want to appreciate the faculty, the management, and the student body. Thank you for having me here today. I see this as a great privilege to speak on afterlife in Christianity and African traditional religion. Everywhere, people wonder about death. They ask 1,001 questions. What is the final destiny of humanity? Does humans become non-existent at death? Or does the real personality survive? If so, where are the dead? Are they conscious? Under what conditions do they exist? It is useless to tell people not to ask these questions. Who is the one who has not desired to know all he or she can about what takes place after death? Certainly that one cannot be found. Humankind has been searching for a way to live forever. If humans cannot live forever, the next best thing will be to become alive again after death. Some scholars argue that there is no immortality of the soul. Cremer, in his book, Beyond the Grave, over centuries ago, had argued that immortality of the soul is not scriptural. These assertions have been of great concern to Christians of various religious inclinations. In this work, I try to address some of them from the perspectives of Christianity and African traditional religion. The concept of life and death in Christianity and African traditional religion. You cannot talk about life after death without talking about life and death. So I want to talk about life and death from the perspectives of these two religions, Christianity and African traditional religion. In Old Testament thought, death is simply the separation of the soul from the body. The Old Testament holds that the principle of life is the spirit or breath given by God. Death is the giving up of the spirit or soul. Without the spirit, the body is dead. The Old Testament speaks of death as the result of sin. God said to Adam, For when you eat of it, you will surely die. You see that in Genesis 2:17. But Adam did not die physically on the day he disobeyed God. Spiritual death, however, is a more serious death seen as divine penalty, the due reward for sin. The Bible contains some instructive indications as to the nature of physical death, that is, cessation of life in our physical body. The Greek word for death is thanatos. In Matthew 10:28, for example, Jesus contrasts death of the body with death of both body and soul. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. The same idea appears in Luke 12:4-5. I tell you, my friends, do not fear those who kill the body, and after that can do no more. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after the killing of the body, has power to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. Life is valued in African traditional religion. Africans generally believe that life is sacred and should not be desecrated. Nobody has the right to take his or her own life or the life of another. Among the Igbo, which is my culture and my tribe, it is believed that life should be lived to its fullness as one prays to see the grandchildren. Christianity and African traditional religion both agree that God is the giver of life and death is not elimination but an extension. Death can only terminate the physical existence, but it cannot stop life from continuing in another realm. The Christian understanding of life is based on God's expression of his love and compassion for the sufferings of humanity and his readiness to forgive through the life, death, and resurrection of his only Son, Jesus Christ. In African traditional religion, it is believed that death entered the world as a result of man's shortcoming, wicked animals, and perhaps divine conflict. From the Christian point of view, the origin of death can be traced to the disobedience of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. Death is said to have come in as a punishment for disobedience. The biblical story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, as told in the book of Genesis, points to this, and many scholars deduce from it that God had originally intended to give man everlasting life. I want to talk about afterlife in Christianity and African traditional religion. Scholars have used various terminologies and phrases to talk about life after death. We have such terms as afterlife. We have the phrase such as life after death. We have life after death. So I will talk about life after death in Christianity and African traditional religion. The concept of afterlife is shared by both Christianity and adherents of African traditional religion. Death is seen not to be the end of human existence, but it opens way to another life. The spirit or soul of humans, as the case may be, however, survives death. We talk about heaven and hell. In Christianity, it is believed that man's way of living on earth determines where he will be after death. The wicked and unrighteous will have their abode in the place of torment, while the believers will inherit the place of comfort. This place of torment is referred to as hell, and the place of comfort, heaven. It can be clearly and emphatically stated that the spirits of the departed do not roam about in space. It can be clearly and emphatically stated that the spirits, that the spirits of the departed do not roam about in space. That means they have a dwelling place. The place of departed spirits is called Hades in Greek. Sheol in the Hebrew. Sheol appears with reference to the afterlife. It is often pictured as a place of darkness. Both Sheol and Hades refer to an intermediate state, that is, the state between death and the resurrection. In the Old Testament, we see that no distinction was made between abodes for the saved and the lost. However, in the New Testament, when we associate Christ's statement to the penitent thief on the cross, the meaning is clear. I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. It can be easily understood from this that when Christ and the penitent thief went to Hades, they did not go to the place of torment because Christ said that he would be with him in paradise, the place of comfort, also called Abraham's bosom. I want to talk about ancestors, ancestral world, the living dead, and spirits. And we have these concepts in African traditional religion. What occupied the minds of many Africans concerning life after death in the realm of religion are his ancestors. The majority of spirits are thought by most people to be the spirits of the departed human beings. More so, the dead in Africa are believed by many to come back to life and continue living through the process of reincarnation. The ancestral world is the place of the dead. It is similar to the world and consists of activities and normal life events. Before the dead can transit to the ancestral world, the funeral rites must be observed. The funeral rites are those rituals performed to make a deceased arrive safely into the land of the dead. It is called second burial, and in my language, it is called ikwamadu. The rituals involve entertainment of visitors, singing and dancing, shaving of hair by the relatives, crying and mourning, pouring of libation, killing of cow or goat, depending on the location, making incantations, chanting to the dead, wearing of masquerades, serving food by the graveside for 4 market days. We have 7 days in a week, but in the Igbo culture, we have only 4 days. The 4 days are Eke, Ore, Afo, and Onko. So food is served by the graveside of the dead for 4 days to enable the dead transit into the ancestral world. Stories are bound in different cultures of people who died and migrated to another place to settle. I heard a story of a man who died and went to the city where he got married and gave birth to children. Consequently, the wife kept on pestering him to take her to his family. He obliged and took the woman to his family. On getting to his graveside in the father's compound, he disappeared. The description the wife gave to his family affirmed that he was their late son. This is not documented anywhere, so I will say is a hearsay. In African traditional religion, the dead continues to live as ancestor or the living dead, which can also be reborn. In African traditional religion, those who are received into the ancestral world are in the place of bliss, while those whose spirits are rejected in the ancestral world and therefore roam in the world are said to be in hell because they do not have a resting place. Once the proper funeral rites have been carried out, the dead transits into the ancestral world. The ancestors or living dead, called Ndiche in Igbo language, play important roles in the affairs of the living. They are the intermediaries between the physical world and the world of spirits. They equally stand to mediate between people and God. Gaiman opines that the living directs their attention to their most senior elders, the living dead, in order to maintain unity and harmony. African traditional religious believers offer sacrifices to their ancestors. According to Ngewa Ethel, these sacrifices can be performed at the graveside. It can be marital sacrifice for agriculture or one performed by hunters in order to secure proficiency required for hunting. This act shows that the Igbo believe in the immortality of the soul. If the ancestors were dead, there would be no need for sacrifice, for such sacrifices. They believe in spirits, ancestral spirits, or the living dead is a proof that there is belief in immortality of the soul in African traditional religion. The majority of spirits are thought by most people to be the spirits of departed human beings. According to Mbiti, the ghosts of people who died recently and whose names are remembered are called the living dead. This term refers to the living relationship between the living and their dead ancestors. Though the person is dead physically, they are living in their continued communication with the living. On the other hand, Mbiti further opines, those ghosts whose names are no longer remembered by the living because they died more than 5 generations ago are called spirits. It is strongly believed that the soul or spirit does not die. The spirits of the dead can appear to their loved ones or people who know them. My mother shared her experience of seeing the spirit of her late aunt, who was very fond of her when she was alive. In her sickness, she told my mother that she will appear to her when she dies. She did really appear to her, according to my mother. My mother said she saw her coming in white garment at night. She made her notice she was the one coming when she raised her clothes and limping because of a bad leg. This made my mother believe that she was actually the one, and she quickly disappeared. At this, my mother was so terrified. Others have shared similar stories of seeing their dead loved ones. Reincarnation. Reincarnation is another concept in the afterlife, strictly believed in African traditional religion. Though this is not reincarnation in the classical sense, but partial reincarnation or partial rebirth. Reincarnation is a religious and philosophical belief prevalent in African traditional religion and other cultures and religions that the soul or spirit, after biological death, begins a new life in a new body. The soul, which is immortal upon death, transmigrates into a new infant in his immediate or nuclear family to live again through a succession of lives. The living dead can continue to reincarnate within the duration of 4 to 5 generations. The reincarnationists have looked for tests to support the belief in reincarnation, which is not far from the Jewish belief. The Jews believe that Elijah will come back to earth before the birth of the Messiah. The Christian belief is not far from the belief in African traditional religion. In Matthew 11:14, we read, "And if you are willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who was to come." The prophecy made in Malachi that Elijah will reappear before the day of the Lord led the people to question John the Baptist whether he was Elijah, and John said no. Those who are against the reincarnation theory quote Luke 1:17 to state that John the Baptist appeared in the spirit and power of Elijah. In African traditional religion, parents consult native doctors, sorcerers, and diviners to inquire of who reincarnated in the body of their child. One thing is sure, they are always told who reincarnated in the form of their innocent baby. Children have been born with scars showing where they had accident in their former life. Although these stories may sound strange, but stories and personal experiences have proved the subject of reincarnation a somewhat reality in African traditional religion. The belief in reincarnation and ancestral spirits supports the immortality of the soul. The dead does not stop to exist in the ancestral world, and it is not unconscious and oblivious of what goes on in his earthly family. That is why he is called the living dead. The consciousness of the soul in Christianity is inferred in the story of Lazarus and the rich man in Luke 16:10-31. In African traditional religion, it is believed that the dead can continue to reincarnate up to 4 or 5 generations. Shorter posits that, and I quote, "If we have no moral worth, we shall not be remembered by our posterity, and there will be no offering," end of quote. How far the remembrance of the dead is bound up with their immortality is a question that receives different answers from one group to another. Resurrection of the body. The concept of the resurrection of the body is widely accepted by Christians. The fate of the dead and their place has been of great concern to Christians. N.T. Wright tries to correct the traditional belief of people going to either heaven or hell as a permanent abode. Those who died in faith will rest in heaven awaiting resurrection. Paradise is a place of tranquility. Resurrection is seen as life after death, or life after life. Departed Christians are awaiting bodily resurrection. God will fill the earth with his glory and transform the old heavens and old earth into the new, and raise his children from the dead to inhabit and reign with Christ over the redeemed world he has made. In Philippians 3:20, Paul speaks of being citizens of heaven, which means we shall go there for a temporary stay, for Jesus will come from heaven in order to transform the present body into a glorious body. The dead sinners will resurrect to judgment, while the righteous will resurrect. The sinners will resurrect to judgment, while the righteous will resurrect to life. Engdahl, in his work on African church fathers, ancient and modern, opines that there is a belief in literal resurrection of the body as the eternal blessedness of the saved and the eternal punishment of the lost. Christians who have died will be raised when Christ comes to receive his church and will be changed into a glorified body. Those who died without Christ will be raised in order that they might be cast into the lake of fire. The Jews believe in resurrection, which had two basic meanings. One, the restoration of Israel. Two, the reconstitution of dead human bodies into new bodily life. Wright believes that the two go together. However, African traditional religion does not have much to say on this. Resurrection of the dead is the foundation of Christianity. The resurrection of Christ gives hope for the resurrection of the dead and points to the fact that those who believe in God will resurrect at the last day. The responses gotten from African traditional religious believers in the course of this research show that the resurrection of the body is not explicitly stated in the African traditional religion as it is in Christianity. One of the respondents in an oral interview, Nwogu Chukwuma, says that in Igbo's mind, resurrection is viewed as reincarnation and apparition. Though the concept of resurrection is not clearly stated in African traditional religion, it does not negate the fact that there is hope for the dead to come back to life. The belief in resurrection helps us to grieve less over our dead loved ones. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 4:13 enjoins believers in Christ not to sorrow even as others, which have no hope. I think it right to say on this that Christianity and African traditional religion are analogous, as they both possess that the soul is immortal and there is life after death. Punishment. In Christianity, the punishment for sin is spiritual death and separation from God. The sinner suffers in the place of torment called hell. It is worthy to note that in African traditional religion, there is no idea of historical culmination or an eschatological era. Moral lessons. Fear does not avert death. If anything, fear does. If anything, fear does more harm than good. Death is the most natural of things. Humanity is destined to die once. We should just take death for what it is, an inevitable and unstoppable phenomenon, which must take every mortal being away. An indifferent attitude towards death will purge the phobia of death from our lives. It will help us to make good use of our time on earth, no matter how short. Death, however, is not the end of life, but a road to another life. Although everyone, at least intellectually, acknowledges the reality and certainty of death, there nonetheless is often an unwillingness to face the inevitability of one's own death. So we see within our society numerous attempts to avoid thinking of death. Even in the church, death is spoken only during Passion Week and funerals. Having realized our limitations and helplessness as mortal beings, we should stop behaving as if the world is our permanent abode. The strong should stop oppressing the weak. The rich should stop flaunting and exhibiting their wealth as if they will enjoy it till eternity. Instead, they should help the less privileged. All forms of oppression and domination should stop, because the world indeed is not our home. We should try to make peace with all human beings, strive to make positive contributions to humanity, so that by the time we are no more here, those that are here can remember us for good. Conclusion. People enjoy hearing about all the blessings that a future with God will ensure. However, the same Bible that declares the glories of heaven, the hope of resurrection of the body, also forecasts the torment of hell. As wonderful as heaven is, and being changed into a glorified body, just so terrifying is the place called hell. Let us therefore live righteously here on earth to save ourselves the torment of hell. The debate still continues. If there is reincarnation, I want to state that in my next life, in the next world, I would still like to be Mercy, I would still like to be a woman, and I would still like to be a theologian. I will end it here. Thank you.
At this point, we end our taping of the program and move to discussion from the floor, with questions and answers from the floor, which I will moderate as soon as we move this over there, right? So, okay, good.